Hello everyone, welcome to the Oxford School of Drama Q&A covering the one-year acting course. I'm Ruby and I do the marketing and comms for the school. This is Kirsty. I'm not sure if I'm going to be pointing the right way, but Kirsty's waving now. She's the head of courses at the Oxford School of Drama. And we've got Chris, who's currently on the one-year course, and Lizzie, who graduated last year from the one-year course. So the way that this is going to work is that you're very welcome to ask questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen, or you can raise your hand using the raise your hand function, and I'll ask you to unmute and you can ask your question out loud, but obviously if you don't want to talk you don't have to, and you can just use the Q&A function. We'd like this to really cover the sort of content of the one-year course. So if you've got an admissions question or a finance question, if you keep that to the chat, because we've got Catherine, who's the admissions administrator, and she'll be able to type a response out to you so that we don't get clogged with a lot of finance and admissions questions, but she'll be here for the whole hour so she can answer lots of those questions using that function. So if you guys want to start putting some questions into the Q&A or raising your hand, I've also got some of the questions here that you guys asked in advance. So let's start with, well, this is one about auditions. Do you have any advice for picking speeches for auditions? There are quite a lot to choose from.
Yeah, I mean, maybe all three of us could answer that really briefly. I mean, my advice would be pick something that you connect with. I don't think there's a sort of right choice. I think that if it's material that resonates with you and that you can connect to, then that's a good option. I'd perhaps choose something that is based in the real world. That might be my other suggestion. Chris, Lizzie, do you want to jump in?
I agree with Kirsty. Pick something that you can really connect with. I think one thing I've noticed about like everybody on the course is everybody can do stuff that's truthful on a consistent basis. Week to week, you see things that you see people doing stuff that looks real. So really picking a character in a monologue that you can connect with, if even if it's not necessarily, I don't know, let's say you have a character that's kind of volatile and you're quite a reserved, calm person, if you can like think of a time in your life where you were very frustrated or angry or volatile yourself, and think of that experience and use that to connect to the character, and just using your own experiences to have it so that it's truthful and real, I think is how I'd answer that.
Great.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely chime with what both Kirsty and Chris have said. I think Oxford has a real focus on training a very truthful actor. It's kind of one of the I suppose it's a kind of an important part of the school's culture and ethos. I hope it's sort of fair to say. So I'd say definitely something that you can find a part of yourself in a little bit. Also, I would say pick something that you do actually really love, because it does end up being one potentially with the auditioning process that you might do quite a few times. And I think picking something that you love will also help you kind of have that need to tell that particular story. We talk a lot in training about the need to speak. And I think if that piece has something in it that you feel is important to share, then that'll carry you through in the audition process. And that will make it feel fresh and different for you each time as well, which I think is really important.
Brilliant advice.
Lovely. So we've got a question from Kira. With the last term taking place in London, what do students do about accommodation? They have to keep their place in Oxford as well as somewhere in London?
No, that's for both the 3-year and the 1-year course, our students move to London for their final term and they change their accommodation at that point. So you let your Oxford accommodation go. Shall we just take the one that Louis has put into the chat?
Oh, yeah. I wondered what you look for in auditionees applying for the 1-year course as opposed to the 3-year. And just quickly like to say that there's a chat function and a Q&A function. If you could put the questions in the Q&A function rather than the chat, because I can't keep an eye on both of them at once.
I think that's a good question. Essentially, we don't necessarily look for a specific level of experience, but what we are looking for is somebody that we feel be ready to enter the industry after 1 year of training. And there is a significant difference in what that means in terms of your ability to take on the training in a year. So I know in a way that's not a very concrete answer for you, and it isn't necessarily about whether you've had lots of performance experience or actually done a degree in theatre studies or other acting training. It's really about readiness to take on the training. And of course, we look at that across various areas. So that might be to do with where we feel your instrument is as an actor, that's really your body, and also where we feel you are as a person, because it's a great course, the 1 year course, but it is an intense course.
Great. If the final round of auditions have to take place online, fingers crossed they won't, would it be possible to arrange a visit to the school at some point in the future?
Yes, I'm sure that would be possible, but actually we are planning now for the second recalls to be here on the site. They're about to start here on the site. So I think that even though we all have to consider that we don't completely know what's going to happen through the rest of this year, that's our aim and ambition at the moment. But of course, visits to the site would be possible, yeah.
Great. So this is just a follow on from the speeches question. Zoe's wondering, with monologues that need an accent, is it better to choose something that uses your own regular accent rather than putting on an accent?
Well, I might ask Chris and Lizzie to answer that one as well. I mean, I certainly think that sometimes working in accent can be a very creative thing. And if you feel confident in it, it can be liberating. But I also feel that it's fine to work in your own accent with your own voice. I think I would think a little bit about the writing of the piece as well, and whether it served that you taking it the accent away for if there's a dialect, or if there's colloquial speech in that, it might not quite work. Chris, Lizzie, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, going with your own accent would be the best way forward. As Kirsty said, if you have a piece that you could do in another accent, one that you're very comfortable with, say, that would be okay. I think there's a girl on the 1 year at the minute, and she is half Spanish, and she did her audition monologue with a Spanish accent, and it worked brilliantly because obviously that's something that she feels very comfortable with, and that's natural to her. But generally speaking, I think sticking to your own accent, because it can be kind of tricky to use a different accent and get the monologue to work well. And I know some of you guys will be applying to places other than Oxford, and I think that will generally be the case for most drama schools. I remember auditioning for Guildhall, like I think it was last year or two ago, and they told people at the beginning of the audition, if you have prepared a piece in a different accent, please don't do it in the audition, please just change and do your own accent, So I think generally sticking to your own accent's probably the best bet.
I would probably say a similar thing. I think what Kirsty was saying about whether or not it serves the piece and serves your piece of storytelling and what you want to do with it is really important. And it can absolutely be a very kind of creatively liberating experience. I would also say, though, that I think in terms of wanting to kind of bring an accent to the audition space as a kind of, this is a skill that I have, that's obviously fantastic if you're really comfortable with a particular accent, but I would say that is something we do look at very thoroughly on the 1 year course. We spend a lot of time working in voice on accents, and that is a really detailed piece of work in which I imagine I definitely felt that I kind of changed and progressed a huge amount during that time. So I wouldn't worry about it needing to be a kind of prerequisite or something that you need to bring to the space, because that is part of the learning experience, and that is a kind of a journey that you will be going on throughout the course, if that makes sense.
Brill.
Right. Can I ask how much movement work is involved in the course? Are there any particular practitioners you draw on, and how you connect this with text work so that the text becomes fully embodied?
That's a good question. Well, I'm the head of movement, so I'll answer that. And if Chris and Lizzie want to add anything, they can. There's a lot of movement on the course. And yes, we do draw from practitioners and also from our own experiences as movement practitioners ourselves. There are movement classes 3 times a week as a kind of minimum in the mornings throughout the training. And we really span work that is about allowing the body to become confident and expressive and versatile, but also, of course, tools for transformation and connection, and give the student a confidence in working physically as a creative. Do you want to jump in, guys, and say anything, or should we move on? What should we do? They might feel under pressure because I taught them both.
No. Never, Kirsty, never. I would just like to say as well, in terms of movement, it's such an important part of the training at Oxford. But I think what's a really lovely part of the movement training is it's very much about what movement is truthful and inhabited and right for your body, specifically for your body. And there's no kind of, we're not there to learn choreography, we're not there to kind of get things right or wrong. It's about what you can discover within, as Kirsty calls it, your instrument. The reason I bring that up is I don't know if there's anyone who might be interested in this, but I have cerebral palsy, which is a kind of physical disability. So it meant that kind of my experience of movement was perhaps different to some of the other actors, some of the other people on the course. But it's all about the potential you can find within your own range of movement. And actually, I think one of the really brilliant things about movement is you'll come to find that it feeds so much of your acting work. It's kind of the bedrock, really. For me, it became the bedrock of my acting work by the end of the course. And I think obviously do everything you can to keep your body really healthy and to look after yourself to the best of your ability. But I think just coming to movement with a really open mind, and also I would also say with a real sense of kindness towards yourself, because that was something at the beginning of the year I was very hard on myself. But actually that's not what movement on this course or at this drama school is about. It's about kind of, it's about a conversation, a dialogue with your body. So yeah, I'd say if you can kind of come to it with a real open mind and a kind of holistic sense of how it can support you as an actor.
Right. We'll probably move on to the next one, just to keep moving through. Thanks, Lizzie.
Right. When filming self-tapes or eventually auditioning, recalling in person, would you prefer us to wear all blacks or anything with colour? Is there a preference?
There's not a preference. If you're filming tapes for audition, or there's not a preference. And then when you learn about self-taping on the course, then you discuss what offers you make in terms of speaking a little bit about the character that you're playing, in terms of how whether you don't costume it exactly, but whether you're making some sort of nod to the character in terms of clothing. I think I've answered that question. But
yeah. Hi, I was wondering how much movement we should try and incorporate into our speeches. Should we try and pick ones that don't require us moving around a lot in front of the camera? If we were performing certain monologues on stage, it may involve a lot of movement, but I've heard that some auditions, even if the monologue demands it, we should try and stay pretty fixed so we stay in focus from the waist up the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're really thinking about something that might involve a lot of movement, and that the piece would be limited in some way, if it didn't, then I might sort of think about that choice. I mean, I think that my advice would be to always stay free in the body. So I wouldn't necessarily think about it in terms of stillness. I think stillness can be rich and interesting anyway, but I think that in your piece, you should certainly feel that you are able to move and express yourself, and kind of work within the frame. I mean, this is my preference really. We wouldn't expect people to sort of be held on the spot.
Great. Oh gosh. For self-tapes, as someone struggling slightly with location, would you rather have a piece which is more well lit or which has less background noise?
I mean, you know, we can cope certainly with a bit of background noise, and you know, we totally understand that it's not always possible to have a perfectly lit and quiet self-tape. I mean, I think you know, I think reasonable lighting is good. It gives the opportunity for people to really see you. And I think a little bit of background noise is fine. I'd also say you need to work for something that works for you as well. If you find the background noise off-putting in some way, then make the decision that works for you.
Great. Would you accept self-written performed poems as audition tapes?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to look at what you're being asked to prepare as well. That in the audition process, there is certainly opportunity to share kind of storytelling or words that come from you. So I think if you're being asked to prepare a monologue, that it would be good to use one that is from a play or from a film.
Can I ask how much blended learning you anticipate for this coming year's course? I appreciate it's hard to say. How the class is adapted for this environment when necessary. So maybe Kirsty, if you take that, then there's a second question for you, Chris, which I'll get to after.
So when we're talking about the next academic year, we are not anticipating any blended learning necessarily. And I take your point that we don't know exactly what's going to happen. There have been things that have come out of everybody suddenly realizing that, you know, we can use Zoom that have been very useful. So chats with industry professionals in professional development, which is something that runs through all of the one-year course and the final year of the three-year course. That has really opened the door to having a great range of guests, because people are so much more able to drop in for an hour and a half and chat about their work over Zoom. So there are some things we'll keep hold of because they're a real benefit, but we're looking at face-to-face training.
And Chris, if blended learning has been an element of this year's course, how have you found working at distance, and how has it affected scene work particularly?
I think obviously, like, having to work with social distancing is not ideal, but you know, it hasn't stopped me or anybody else, I think, from improving massively. You know, whenever we're performing, we don't have masks on and we are at a distance and everything, but like, I still think we've been able to do some real good work and to really improve and to enjoy performing. So it's not ideal, but it hasn't stopped me or anybody else from enjoying ourselves, having fun and improving, to be quite honest with you. So we're very lucky in that way.
Yeah, and it might be worth us saying that you know, partly because of where we are with outdoor space and have every room having ventilation and having some quite large spaces, we have actually managed to do 80% of our work as a minimum of face-to-face training rather than remote work.
Great. So somebody's got a question about, after trying for 3 to 4 years of auditioning, is there any advice you could pass on that might help? And do you see a lot of students who have auditioned for a number of years?
Well, I'm going to say a couple of things, and then maybe if the other two want to add something. So I do see a lot of students that try for many years, a lot of applicants that try for many years, and often people come on the course who have been applying to drama school for a few years. And I think the one piece of advice that I'd give, which I know is easier said than done, is to just try and relax. I think sometimes that kind of little bit of pressure can build up when you're having another go, but actually it's about relaxing and having the confidence in what you want to share and finding some ease in that.
Let's go for it.
Go for it.
Yeah, I think going back again to what we said earlier about like really trying to get your performance so that it's truthful and doing what you can to have it seem real, and continuing on from what Kirsty said, like remembering that this is fun. Do you know what I mean? Like this is, if you think about like the best performance that you've ever done, you know, you look back on it and it's incredibly enjoyable. You're kind of in the moment. You're not really thinking about anything. Sort of the more fun you have whenever you're auditioning, the more likely it is you're going to get in. You know, and it's maybe easy for me to say, but if you really just try and relax and enjoy yourself and have fun with it, and yeah, like you're really giving yourself a good chance.
I think I would say I completely understand as well that with the audition process, it can be really emotionally draining, emotionally, physically draining, and I completely understand the disappointment of perhaps kind of trying and trying again. I think the in terms of kind of advice or help that I could give was, I would say, from my experience, I found that when it came to the right place, at the right school, it was as much about figuring out, it was as much kind of you, what am I trying to say? I think what I mean is that the right school will also choose you as well as you will choose the right school, if that makes sense. So sometimes it is a bit more of a kind of dialogue, because I know it can, I completely understand that when you're auditioning, perhaps multiple times, it can feel a little bit like a one-sided conversation. But I think when it comes to maybe perhaps the right place, but also the right time for you as an actor or you in your training, it will feel more like a dialogue. And that's really important too, because it has to feel right for you if it's going to be your kind of home for the next year. And it does in many ways become your home for the next year. So sorry, I hope that's not too vague, but I just thought I'd offer that.
That's great.
When doing your monologues to the panel at interview stage, I guess this recall stage, should you try to keep them pretty identical to how you did them in your self-tape?
No. And actually, we will work with you to move your pieces around. When I say move, I don't necessarily mean move. I mean to, you know, to reinvestigate and to be, you know, sort of bit playful within the work. So no, you don't. I think just allow it to feel fresh, as Chris was saying. Yeah.
Great. I find it difficult to find monologues that I can, oh, it's just jumped around, that I can connect with or sound natural, as I love naturalism. Do you have any advice on how I can go about finding the right speech that sits well for me?
I don't know. I feel like maybe we've offered some. I mean, I think it's about, you know, wide reading. I think it's about spending a bit of time with the piece, perhaps. Sometimes, you know, you need to spend a bit of time with it, read it a few times before you sort of make a decision. I would, you know, certainly think about if it's a play and you find that piece quite interesting and you're not sure, you can read the whole play, would be a piece of advice. But you know, take your time and keep looking.
So we've got this question twice. What does a general day as a one-year student look like?
Like you to answer
that. I think right, first thing in the morning we would do BodyCon, which is kind of taking you through yoga and just to sort of help you relax kind of physically and mentally. It's difficult to perform well if you're holding tension. And we do a wee bit of like a voice warm up with that. Typical day, I think Tuesday in the autumn term there, we'd start off with voice work, which was kind of taking you through various exercises to try and get more resonance in your voice and more physical relaxation again. Then we had applied movement, which was, we would kind of look at things like, say, mime, for example, and kind of how to tell a story with your body. Might seem kind of unusual, but if you learn how to tell a story in all of these different ways, it can really help with your with your acting. Then we had, I think, we had lunch and then 2 acting sessions with one of our acting tutors, and we would do some scene work and all different types of acting exercises. One of the things we did was an object exercise where one of the first things you do, you kind of recreate a kind of, say, routine that you would normally do. Say, for example, your routine for getting ready to go somewhere. You would maybe pack a bag or get changed, or maybe you'd have a phone call to make or an email to send. And through doing those kind of simple physical tasks, sort of, as yourself, like not, putting too much into it to try and make it interesting, through that you would kind of, it can help you understand and learn how to be kind of truthful in the moment and how to interact with the world. So I think that'd be a typical day, and we would finish at 5:15.
I think Chris has covered that really beautifully and thoroughly. I think one thing I would just say is that absolutely starting off with those principal classes, like your voice, your movement, acting, your applied movement, as the year progresses, that will shift and change slightly when you start working on production. So perhaps some of the time that you had blocked out for acting classes, for example, will become rehearsal time. So that does change and progress as you move through the course. I can't speak so much to the sort of the London term, if you like, because of the pandemic. Ours was slightly different, so we had to kind of adapt training. So that'll be different, fingers crossed this year, everything will be different. But yes, yeah, absolutely. Those are the kind of principal classes. I would just say, actually, on BodyCon, if you can really, really kind of make the most of that time, because it is really golden, and it really sets you up for the day and sometimes you won't even realize kind of how much you need it until you miss it. Actually, just speaking from experience now, I miss it so much. And it's a kind of really useful way to prepare yourself. I think one more brief thing I would just say is pacing yourself, because they are very long focused days and they're brilliant. You get so much out of them, but in terms of like managing your own stamina, it's really important to kind of like make sure you have a little 5 minutes to give yourself a break at lunchtime, making sure that you kind of take care of yourself in the evening and get enough sleep. And it sounds like a really obvious thing to say, but actually just those kind of basics are so important in this course, I would say.
Yeah,
useful.
Absolutely. And also we guide the students through some of that self-care as well, because Lizzie's absolutely right. It's quite there's a lot of investment of time and energy on the course, and it's really important to look after yourself.
Right. Are there many performance opportunities in the 1-year course?
Yes, there are. So the first term of the 1 year is really about tools and learning sort of building blocks. And of course, within that, there are in-class performances and sharings. And then the productions start from the second term onwards. And there's 1 or 2 productions per term after that. So just remembering that the 1 year course is 4 terms long, and that final term, as Lizzie was saying, is normally in London. And that period in London would be full-time rehearsals for that last show.
Great. So a question for Lizzie and Chris: what are your goals and aspirations, and how do you feel OSD helped you work towards them? And I apologise if that's a bit of an intense question.
That's an amazing question. Oh my gosh. Wow. I think, in terms of my own goals and aspirations, obviously just kind of to do good work and to kind of apply the training and apply all the brilliant things that I learned in the training into some really good work. I think that the 1 year course sets you up brilliantly for that in many different ways. I think it sets you up really brilliantly as an actor, with all of your kind of your fundamentals and your, I think confidence is a huge thing. It was a huge thing for me. I think that it's as much a kind of process of discovery as an actor as it is a process of discovery within yourself. And I hope that doesn't sound cheesy, because it's actually incredibly true. And those two things are so kind of, they're very much wedded. And I think kind of coming through that course, and coming out the other end, you will have a real sense of what you have to offer as a storyteller, and uniquely as well, which I think is something that Oxford does really in a really lovely way. It's very much what you as an actor can offer, and you will find that everyone in the class is different. Everyone has something slightly different to offer, and that's a wonderful thing. I think in terms of, I think Kirsty, you mentioned professional development sessions, which are really, really useful, because they talk you through things like networking, things like making some really productive, proactive links with people in the industry. There's also, I know Oxford's really, really big on actors making their own work, and actors kind of creating their own employment in many ways, and creating their own art, which is great. And there's a real kind of culture for that as well. And I think what's lovely is that other people around you share that passion. So that's really kind of really encouraged and really well fostered. Yeah, so I think what I would kind of say is it prepares you really, really well in terms of kind of the skill side of things, and you as an actor, but also in terms of what to expect on the more practical sides, and the ways in which the party you can carve out into the industry from different angles, as well as just kind of like, you know, this is the one established route. And I do think in terms of those different angles, keeping a really open mind and keeping really creative and sort of savvy and proactive if you can is a great way to do it. Sorry, that's a very long answer. Yes.
I think in terms of like goals and aspirations for me, like be a full-time professional. Like I think that's everybody's goal, is to be able to like make a living from doing this, from doing something you love, like reach my potential and like be a part of stories that I find interesting, you know, play characters that I find interesting, that I would want to watch, that I enjoy watching, and be a part of stories that I enjoy watching, whether it's TV, film, or theater, or anything like that. And yeah, in really enjoy myself and enjoy the whole journey. In terms of what I've learned at Oxford that would help, I think the experience you have of being in an environment, you know, with loads of other actors, and where you have people who know what they're talking about, teaching you everything, is invaluable, you know. And the experience of performing, you know, of getting to go up weekly, daily basis and perform in front of everybody. For me, learning to sort of trust my instincts, you know, to do the work, kind of trust that it's there, and run off my instincts, and just the confidence that if I can do that, you know, you can give a good performance. I think that, along with all the other kind of technical things, you know, like activities and objectives and these types of things that you use to break down a script and apply to your performance.
Great. So this question is, do you get many applicants that have already done a drama degree at university but want more intense drama school training afterwards? And we also had a question in advance about someone who'd done a science degree. So Kirsty?
We do get people that have done a drama degree, yes, and want to come and really sort of hone things a little. I would say that the one-year course is, you know, it is a real time to investigate your creative self and to really immerse yourself in learning your craft. So I think that regardless of whether you've done a drama degree or not, to really commit to that in the course is essential. And yes, we do get people who've done all sorts of other things in their lives. So whether that's degrees in other areas, or even actually other professions. So we've trained doctors and lawyers and teachers and, you know, ex-professional dancers and football players and all sorts of things. And it's all about your passion about doing it. So
great. So we've got one question here about screen training. Actually, two questions quite similar. So I really enjoyed the video about screen training, and particularly what Ed said about encouraging students to find their own voices. I was wondering how the school goes about fostering this and whether there's been a greater focus on screen work in recent years. And the other question is about how much of the course is given to screen and radio projects in terms of the general structure of the course, and how you've learned from that, Lizzie and Chris.
I think we've done a bit of stuff on screen training so far, like self tapes, and if you've gone over a few sort of technical things with Ed, the majority of our screen training will be done in this kind of coming super term. In terms of like the balance of everything, I think it's kind of equal. Like Oxford, it sort of prepares you equally for theatre, TV, film, and we're doing radio classes at the minute over Zoom, which help not just radio but voiceover work, whether that's video games or anything like that. So yeah, it gives an equal balance, which is maybe unlike some schools. I think there would be some kind of drama schools that would maybe be sort of openly kind of focused more on theatre, but Oxford, to me, and I think everybody else, sort of feels as if it gives like a real balance to everything. So yeah, I'd say I've learned a good bit so far, and then we're obviously going to be getting plenty of experience of stuff on camera next term.
Absolutely. I think we were really fortunate to do quite a lot of screen work, particularly kind of in the period of time just before we started training from home because of the pandemic, which was really, really fantastic and really very useful and very detailed, I would say, really detailed. And I think it is screen work, it is really nice to kind of take your time over learning about it and be quite specific and quite detailed. I would say in terms of kind of acting for screen, I think the principles are, and the school is definitely kind of teaches this, the principles are always the same really in terms of what we're trying to do as actors. We're trying to be truthful and tell a story as a kind of honest character in that moment. Obviously, technically there are differences compared to, being on stage and being in front of a camera. But I'd say don't worry about in terms of, oh gosh, I've got to have a lot of specific screen training, because that comes into the course naturally, very much so. I would also say as well, if you have time, if you kind of are interested in it, just doing some practice self-tapes just for you, just kind of like finding pieces of text that you're interested in, working on them, kind of breaking them down, and then having a bit of a practice and a play around with self-tapes, I would think is really useful, because also in terms of auditions on the other side of training, pretty much everything now, and this again may be a kind of more prevalent because of the COVID situation, but pretty much everything is self-tapes, at least for the first round. So it is really, really useful to get those kind of like, even just your confidence up with it and your kind of familiarity of, right, I'm going to put the camera here and I'm going to use this wall behind me. Just those things. It's nice when they don't feel like kind of big insurmountable things to navigate. Yeah.
Great. How much, or is there any assessed written work during the year?
No, there isn't assessed written work. The students do keep journals, and the journals are a really useful way of reflecting on what you're doing on a daily basis, but also a fantastic resource that you then have later on. As Lizzie was saying, students go on to do a real variety of work afterwards, lots of which is self-made, and people start theatre companies and have, really rich and fruitful careers. And to be able to look back on some of those processes that you went through in drama school is a really useful resource. So there is certainly work that is around writing reflections, and also on looking out into the industry and learning about how you connect to the industry and writing reflections on that as well. But other than that, this is a vocational course, which is a practical course.
Great. If we have a monologue that we really connect with, but it's from a very popular play, will it be frowned upon by the panel?
No.
How much opportunity is there to get a bit of extra time in with a tutor if you find that it is something you need for a particular technique or topic? And is studio space available after hours for extra personal work?
I'm going to ask the others to chip in as well, but I'm just going to kind of preface it with something, which is that because we're a small school, we are able to give everybody individual attention. So we have one-to-one tutorials in the disciplines built into the curriculum. And yes, you can use the spaces after hours. In terms of being able to grab the tutors and chat to them or have a bit of time, I'm going to let the others answer because, you know, I might have a biased opinion, so I'll let them.
Go for it, Chris.
Yeah, I think like during class, like there's plenty of opportunities to kind of to ask questions and get feedback. If there is something that you're kind of stuck on, and if you are having a bit of difficulty, you know, there's different ones in our year that have kind of stayed behind at the end of class and had a bit of a chat with the tutors. And as Kirsty said, the tutorials, that wee bit of one-on-one time are really good for just sort of having a chat, just to sort of let them know how you're getting on and go over any things that you're having difficulty with. So yeah, I would say there's quite a lot of kind of opportunities to get kind of that wee bit of one-to-one sort of feedback and have a chat.
Definitely. I think tutorials are such a gift, and actually it's not, I mean, from just talking to people, the way that Oxford does it is quite unique, I think, in many ways. I don't think there's necessarily, as Kirsty was saying, because it is a smaller school, it does mean that the tutors are able to give the students that bit more kind of individual attention, which is fantastic. Tutorials are really invaluable periods of time as well. And I would say if you had something in particular that you'd encountered in class or something that you really wanted to unpack, it's great to kind of bring that along to that tutorial session. I always found that the tutors at Oxford were so generous with their time, because I definitely remember kind of grabbing people, and obviously within reason, and they're all very busy, but what I would say is there is a real focus on kind of the individual student, and the tutors tend to kind of know what you're working on and what you're working with, and will have an awareness of if there's something in particular that you're exploring. It seems like the tutors will have an awareness of that, which is really lovely. So yeah, I'd say definitely kind of ask as many questions as you can, again within reason, respectfully, but ask as many questions as you can, and kind of keep talking. I think keep the conversation going, I would say, because I think that's the way in which you'll get the most out of the training.
Great. Do you feel that OSD tailors teaching methods to the students' needs and/or personalities?
I'm going to let the other two answer that as well, if they're happy to.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think that like everybody does bring something kind of slightly different, and I know we did a bit of scene work, and the scenes that were assigned to us, characters that were assigned to us, weren't kind of decided before we got to the school or anything. They kind of the tutors took a bit of time to get to know us and kind of give us characters and scenes that they thought that we can kind of connect to and that we would enjoy. And yeah, I think the tutors will sort of adapt to everyone, you know, like there'll be some people who maybe progress quicker than others in some areas, and tutors have always seemed, you know, kind of very happy about that and very patient with everybody. So yeah, I'd say they have adapted. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think as well, these things emerge as the year progresses, as in kind of we all, I found, it became quite clear what our different offers were as actors as time went on, and that's something that will organically kind of emerge from the group as you progress, and absolutely the tutors are very much in tune with that. And I think it's really great, and it's what's really interesting is you'll notice that because we kind of we investigate lots of different routes in, if you like, or practitioners, and you notice that some really work for some people and some don't work for others, but then the next one will really work for that person, not for another. And it's kind of figuring out what kind of practices and what kind of process works for you, and the tutors will absolutely be in tune with that and recognize that and look at where they can kind of challenge you and push you a little bit more, and what you're kind of comfortable in, if you like. Yeah, I hope that answers that question.
Great. Does the training focus mainly on classical Stanislavski techniques, or are there other systems like Strasbourg and Meisner studied as well?
Yes, Stanislavski is the, you know, is at the foundation of the training, and Uta Hagen's approach. We don't at the moment use Meisner on the course, but actually I think that we have quite experienced practitioners, so they themselves will be using their own practices that may well have similarities to Meisner. I mean, I'll just give you an example. One of our voice tutors works with a technique called dropping in, which has real similarities to the Meisner approach. So because our practitioners in the school are quite experienced, there's quite a kind of wide scope of approaches to draw from.
Great. So there are two questions here that are quite similar for both of you, Lizzie and Chris. What is the most valuable thing you've learned from doing the course? And is there anything you feel Oxford has changed your outlook on concerning your personal way of working or your performance practice?
Go on ahead, Lizzie.
Oh, sure, okay. But that's an amazing question as well. What a brilliant question. Yes, hugely, hugely, really. I think that in terms of kind of so just kind of recap, was it in terms of like personal discovery, Ruby, was that kind of the main focus of that question?
Yeah, personal practice, but also your performance practice or your way of working.
Sure, yeah, okay, great. Absolutely, definitely. I think for me, and again, this is unique to me and will be completely different for every actor because that's the nature of the course. But for me, I came into the process as a very, I suppose you could call quite a heady actor. Like that was my place of security, and that's where I like to lead from in terms of my work. And I kind of, I wanted to sort of forefront more of an academic approach sometimes, because that's where I think I've kind of felt more secure for a lot of my life, and actually what this course did was really pull me back into my body, and that sounds quite, it was refocus me back into my body and help me kind of breathe back into my body, actually is more accurate. And that has really changed my way of working, and it unlocks so much that you didn't realize was there, but serves you both as a person and as an actor in kind of really fantastic ways. So for me, movement and voice were really huge in doing that. They were really, really essential. And I think they were some of the things that I was a little bit fearful of, to be honest, coming into training, because I kind of thought, oh God, I'm probably not going to be very, very good at that. But actually what you discover is that everybody is good at that in their own way. And that's the whole point of this kind of holistic approach to training. And yes, I think I would say for me the movement work has been huge, and it's something that I kind of will carry with me going forward in all work, really.
Yeah, I think for me, just again the performances, experiences like of doing that daily, weekly is just invaluable. You know, it really is, and the confidence that gives you, the trust that in your process, so many other things, so many kind of little techniques. If I had to pinpoint other ones, whenever I came to the school, I wasn't sort of super comfortable telling a story physically, telling a story with my body. You know, I kind of wanted to just sit on a chair and just talk, but you can't just do that whenever you're acting like. But through the movement classes and everything, I went from at the start of the year probably not being that confident to probably whenever we left, I would say I was kind of confident at telling a story with my body, which is quite a jump, you know. So all the work that you do on your body and kind of inhabiting a character's posture and the way they move and everything like that has been super helpful for me in particular.
Great. Is a monologue from a play preferred over a speech from a film for auditioning?
No, I think that if you find something that you feel has a journey and that you connect with, and again, it's about really enjoying telling that story, I think both are good options.
Great. Could you talk a little bit more about what finding your instrument means?
Yeah, so I mean, we don't really explore the body in terms of you know, direct fitness or, you know, choreographing dance and things like that. We might use a kind of reference to those sorts of things as we work creatively, but really your physical self, your expressive self is released through confidence building and through enjoying allowing yourself to sort of relax and trust in your physical self-expression. So even though we might use, again, you know, work of various practitioners, or we might use dance, or we might use improvisation as means into this, your instrument is not only your physical body, it's your imagination, it's your, what we might call your psychophysical self. So your imagination and how you connect with the psychology of being a human being and how that is sort of lived in the body.
Great. Will singing lessons be a part of training, although they're aware that it's not a musical theatre course, but exercising helping you to tell a story through music?
Yes, exactly that.
Nice. What does the second round recall entail, and what advice would you give to someone for the second round recall?
I mean, the second round recall is an opportunity to sort of come in and share. So, I mean, it changes a little bit each year, and we're still in the process of developing the content for this year. But it's an opportunity to kind of talk from yourself and to share. So sometimes that might be, you know, telling a story from your life. It might be doing a little physical improv that's playful and fun. And you may share a piece that you've prepared, or you also may investigate a piece that you're asked to look at on the day. And of course, we give you time to do those things. And we also, in second recall, really find a way to allow people to relax and to try to free themselves into the enjoyment of that day, rather than feel like, you know, it's a test all the way through. Because in the same way that when you audition as an actor, what the people auditioning you want is they want you to feel able to give your best and to enjoy that and to offer something. So that's what we are trying to create with that second recall.
Do you have any general tips for recording the self-tapes, where to look, etc.? I'd just like to say, on the Apply Now page on the website, there is a short video from the principal explaining that specifically in relation to self-taping auditions this year and last year. But I don't know, Kirsty, if you have anything else to add.
No, I think that's a really good resource, and that explains it well. So I think, yeah, drop into that and have a look.
Great. There's just 2 more questions before we finish. How are the terms split over the year? Is the course an entire calendar year or an academic year? And how long is the final term in London?
Yeah, so it's an academic year. So we usually start in sort of mid to late September. Next year, in the next academic year, there's a likelihood that we will start slightly later because we're going to run our summer term this year a little bit longer because of having been in lockdown. So a calendar year, 4 terms, the one-year course is 4 terms, and it ends in the following September, around the middle of the following September. And of course, during that time, what we've done is we've moved the work to London for the final term.
How do the performance and showcase opportunities compare to the 3-year course?
They're the same, essentially. It is interesting to know that how the industry wants to see people graduating from drama school is changing, because of course, as Lizzie was saying, taping is now such a part of the audition experience for an actor in getting jobs, that much more of the work that is shared with the industry as you graduate from drama school is going to be recorded media. But also I think a combination of live work that is streamed, things that are pre-recorded, and then also performances that people will be invited to come and see. So the work that is showcased, it really spans several projects.
Great, and I think Catherine is just answering the last question in the chat, but I might ask it quickly. Auditions in 2022, will they be online self-tape auditions, or will they be in person?
I think there's a likelihood that there'll be a mixture again. So it's quite likely that some of the first round will be remote, and that after that they'll be in person. But I think we're yet to fully work that program out, because there are lots of things that we want to take into account, including making our auditions really accessible to people, but also being able to kind of run workshops across the country and have people audition through that route as well.
Great, that's all the questions. Thanks everyone for attending, and if we didn't see your question, or there's one that wasn't answered that you'd like to know, just send us an email. And thanks Kirsty, Lizzie and Chris. Someone just said, will a recording of this be available to those who have attended? It will be put on YouTube probably next week. We'll tweet about it when we do, so it will be public for anyone who wants to watch it.
Thanks very much, it's been great.
Thank you.
Thanks Lizzie, thanks Chris.
Thanks.
Thank you.